All right, hello there, thrill seekers. And before I begin, here are the dates that I'm going to be in Europe very soon. I'm going to be in Finland, Germany, and England. You can see the dates on your screen. And if you want to attend any of these events, go to the URL that you're seeing on the screen right now, which is hardcorezen.info/events. And there you will find clickable links where you can write to the organizers and find out how you can be part of these events. All right, I got a question. And as you know, since before your sun burned hot in space and before your race was born, I have awaited a question. So here is the question. Hello, Mr. Warner. One picture I have always on my mind is the sea/wave one. I think you mentioned it in one of your books. The universe can be seen as the sea and everything in existence as waves. The universe manifests itself in the waves. Emptiness, parentheses, universe sea, is form, parentheses, beings, waves. But I always asked myself what produces these waves. At the beginning of the universe, there were no higher life forms and therefore no consciousness. So consciousness cannot produce or be the waves. What is the role of consciousness in emptiness/form? Was there being before consciousness? Well, yeah, I don't know why you're asking me that, but I'll do my best to answer the question. And I'm going to show you first a clip of me asking Nishijima Roshi a kind of similar question circa sometime around the year 2000, about 24 years ago. And so let's watch that clip. When you question the existence of consciousness, you said we can't know because it's just a word.
Uh-huh.
However, there is something we can say that I am aware of your presence and you're aware of my presence.
Yes.
So what is that if we don't call it consciousness?
So that is also explanation. Thoughts. So maybe true, but such explanation is not just reality. So we believe in the existence of reality, but to explain it only relying upon concepts. And we have to wonder whether concepts are real entity or not.
So let me just interpret Nishijima Roshi's rather idiosyncratic English there. He is saying that the only way we are living in reality, and we believe in reality, and reality is reality. Reality is real. But the only way we can explain reality is by relying on concepts. He kind of garbles his words there, but that's what he's trying to say. I know this because he said it many times in other ways to me and to others in lectures, etc. So we have to rely on concepts in order to talk about reality. And we have to wonder whether our concepts are true or not. I mean, when I read this question, it immediately made me think of this clip from the movie This Is Spinal Tap, which I managed to find on the internet. So let me show you that.
If the universe is indeed infinite, then what does that mean? How far is all the way? And then if it stops, what's stopping it, and what's behind what's stopping it? So what's the end? Is my question to you.
That's like a Zen, what?
Conan.
Yeah. Where there's no beginning or end. It's like after a rain.
What's the sound of, clapping in the forest after a tree falls?
Yeah,
exactly,
yeah.
Okay.
I'm not trying to make fun of the guy who asked me this question by showing you that clip. It's just every time these kind of questions come up, this is what I think of. They sort of remind me, I always think of them as kind of stoner questions, like, wow, if you see the color red and I see the color red, but what if you see actually the color that you see as red is the color I see as blue, but oh my God, it could be. Anyway, you think about these kind of things when you're high and they sound really groovy, but there's no answer to them. This is why the Buddha, when he was asked questions like this, would generally respond with either saying, the question does not fit the case, or he would just stay silent. There's different texts in which he gives this answer, and there's some overlap between them, so it's not clear whether he just did one or the other. I think he probably did both. But that's the thing. You're framing a question for which there is no answer. And the reason there is no answer to this question, it really seems like there ought to be an answer to this, to questions like these. And I'll give you one that I found recently rediscovered. Okay, Omni magazine was this science magazine made by the same people who published Penthouse, the X-rated magazine. And I used to read Omni all the time. And I remember seeing this interview with John Lilly. And John Lilly is an interesting character in that he was both a big acid head and ketamine. He used to like to take ketamine a lot. And he was also a diligent researcher in the field of dolphin and whale intelligence. So he really believed that dolphins and whales speak a language and that they share a philosophy and all kinds of things. And he was determined to try to crack that. And he never did, but he thought he got close. And nobody can really say that he was wrong. So I think it's an interesting area, but it's kind of, nobody really knows what's going on there anyway. But this interview with John Lilly really had an impact on me, and I rediscovered it, I don't remember, a few years ago. I was in this place called The Last Bookstore in L.A., in downtown L.A., and I found this book in which the John Lilly interview was reprinted. And I was just looking at it a couple of days ago, and I happened to open up a random page just before I got this guy's question, so I think it's kind of funny. But here is John Lilly answering some, I don't know, it probably doesn't really matter exactly what comes before this, but he says, my experiences, and he's talking about experiences taking LSD and ketamine inside an isolation tank, which is this tank that's supposed to remove you from all sensory input. It's completely dark. You're floating in water that's exactly your body temperature. It's supposedly soundproof and so on. I actually experienced one of these in, I think it was McGill University. It was a university in Montreal in Canada. And somebody had access to one and said, you want to try it out? And I'm like, wow, yeah, sure. And all I did was fall asleep in it. I didn't experience alternate realities like maybe I should have been taking some drugs. But anyway, I just fell asleep. It was very pleasant, but it wasn't complete sensory deprivation, as far as I could tell, because I could still hear a lot of stuff going on, and I could still feel the water on my body. So I don't know, maybe it wasn't set up right. But anyway, here we go. He says, my experiences have convinced me that Eastern yoga philosophy is right, that there is a Purusha or Atman, a soul, for each person, one for the planet, one for the galaxy, and so on. As the mathematician-philosopher Franklin Merrill Wolff says in his book, The Philosophy of Consciousness Without an Object, that's the name of the book, consciousness was first, before the void even. When consciousness got bored and turned in upon itself, creation began. He, she, it created time, space, energy, matter, male, female, the whole tableau. And he made it all so complicated that sneaky things may go beyond its ken, and so on and so forth. And that's an explanation for the origin of the universe that I must have read when I was like 14 or 15 years old, I don't know. And I didn't realize it, but it stuck with me for a long time because I thought, ooh, that sounds interesting. And there's all sorts of stuff like that out there. So, I could have answered this. I don't remember. I did answer that guy's question directly via email, but I don't remember what I said. But the main thing I said is it's just kind of beyond our ability to understand. Now, if you want to get the lowdown on what some of the various Buddhist theories about stuff like that are, there's this book I own called Buddhist Cosmology by Akira Sadakata, with a foreword by Hajime Nakamura. So I don't know Sadakata's stuff very well, but Hajime Nakamura is one of the few Buddhist scholars that Nishijima Roshi actually admired and thought was pretty good. So I imagine since he endorsed it that Sadaka's Sadakata, sorry, his Akira Sadakata's research is pretty good, and I read this years ago, and it kind of goes into all these Buddhist theories of creation and all this stuff, and it's sort of interesting. But one of the things about the Zen version of Buddhism is that we basically ignore that stuff. I mean, there isn't a whole lot. If you look in Dogen's writings, you will see from time to time he'll mention different things that come up in Buddhist cosmology. Like he'll talk about Mount Sumeru. Mount Sumeru is I'm not going to try to find it, but there's a picture of it. Maybe that's the picture of it. Oh, there you go. I found it. There's a picture of how the Buddhist universe is supposed to work, and at the middle is Mount Sumeru, which is this sort of cosmic mountain that dominates everything. I don't remember how it goes. So Dogen will mention these kind of things, but he doesn't mention them as he's trying to teach you about them. He just kind of references them, and it sort of reminds me of how, an atheist might say to a friend of his, "For God's sake, shut up." And you can't extrapolate the fact that he said "for God's sake" that he actually believes in God. It's just an expression. It's just a way of talking about something. It's a way of using a metaphor. So I don't think Dogen is ever trying to teach us about this, because he doesn't go into any great detail on it. He just kind of mentions it in passing. And I think the problem is that the human mind is just not capable of understanding this stuff. And the way, the sort of metaphor I would think of to try to explain why these problems are impossible is, let's take a dog, for example, like my dog Ziggy, who I put in pretty much every video, at least at the end of the video, and he's sleeping over there somewhere. He's trying to get out of the heat. But take a dog. Now, I just looked this up before I made the video, and according to the internets, the average dog knows about 165 words. So, that's more than I thought Ziggy knew. But he does seem to know words. I get surprised all the time when he'll respond to a word that I didn't know he knew. But according to the internets, a trained dog who's been, working on the words and stuff can learn up to 1,000 words, right? So let's try to imagine explaining the postal service to a dog, because this would be a really useful thing. It would be really useful for me to be able to explain how the postal service works to Ziggy, because Ziggy freaks the F out every day, sometime in the early afternoon usually. The post here is weird. It shows up at different times a day, but anyway, usually it's around 2 or 3 in the afternoon. And he just freaks out every time the postal carrier comes up on the porch and puts some stuff in the mailbox. And if I could explain to him how the postal service works, then I wouldn't have to hear him going crazy every afternoon at 2 or 3 in the afternoon when the post person arrives. But in order to explain the postal service to Ziggy, let's say he's a really smart dog, and I'd have to put my explanation within those 1,000 words that he knows and try to get him to understand the concept of a post office and mail and how the mail gets delivered, and the trucks that he seems to think are big animals that he barks at and tries to chase away, which he does that when they pass sometimes. You'd have to get through a lot. And he's, as animals go, dogs are pretty intelligent, but you can't explain the postal service to a dog, right? And explaining how the universe came into being to a human is basically impossible. We just can't get it. There's as much of a block in our ability to understand something as complex, or it's not even the complexity of it. It's just beyond our ken, as to use John Lilly's words. It's just beyond our ability to understand, no matter how smart we are. The smartest scientists in the world are never going to figure that out, because it can't be figured out in the way that we figure things out, because it doesn't work like that. Our brains are made to work within one sphere of reality, but we can't get beyond that. Now, having said that, The other aspect of this is that if you work on a meditation practice and you do it for long enough, an intuitive sense starts to develop, and at times, for some people, if they work on it enough and if the karma is just right, it can kind of burst out. And this is the phenomenon known as Satori or Kensho or whatever. And it kind of bursts out and you go, whoa! And for a second, you get a glimpse of what is beyond your own understanding. The problem is, you cannot then take that glimpse of what was beyond your understanding and then make it understandable. There's no way, because the brain just can't make it understandable. It is an experience that's kind of beyond the brain and beyond the body, because what we really are is beyond the brain and beyond the body. But when we're trying to interpret it or explain it or trying to kind of think about it, all we've got is the brain to work with, and we can't, it just isn't going to go there. No matter how hard you try, it isn't going to go there. And that's why the Buddha usually answered these questions by saying the question does not fit the case. You're framing this, you're framing what is beyond time and space, for example, to go back to the questioner's question, in terms of time and space. Like, what happened before consciousness? You know, what happened before? So you're getting into before and after, when before and after are actually sort of a conceptual thing, like Nishijima Roshi is saying in that clip. It's a concept. When I'm talking about consciousness to him, I am using concepts, and we have to wonder, are those concepts reliable? So that's the problem here, and you're just never ever going to get an answer. So what the Buddhists do is, instead of, at least in the Zen stream of Buddhism especially, is instead of worrying about those ultimate answers, which I admit are really fascinating to think about. I love thinking about that stuff, you know. I can go on and on about it if you want me to. But the problem is you can't get anywhere with that. You're just kind of going blah, 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 blah. You know, ultimately it doesn't go anywhere. So what we try to do is concentrate on life here and now, and how to live here and now, and how to do the right thing here and now. And this is why Dogen says that Showaku Makusa is the ultimate philosophy, is the ultimate Buddhist philosophy, is don't enact wrong, don't bring wrong into the world. That's the ultimate Buddhist philosophy. So there you go. I hope that answered the question without answering it at all, which I did. But that's the answer to the question. That's the best answer I can come up with. And maybe you'll find a more, interesting answer. But I don't think you're going to find a better answer. I'm not trying to say my answer is the best, but my answer is as the Buddha framed it, which is the question does not fit the case. You can't get there. You can't get there from here. I think that was an REM song. That's it. Maybe that's what that song means. I never thought about that until I just said it just now. Anyway, maybe I should learn that song for a new video. All right. So if you want to contribute to me not answering people's questions, you can go to the links that you can find below in the description section of this video if it's on YouTube. And if the PayPal link doesn't work, I'm sorry, I'm trying to work on that. But if you want to find a link that does work for sure, because it works every damn time, there you can go to the URL that you're seeing on the screen below, which is hardcorezen.info/donate. That is hardcorezen.info/donate. That's where you'll also find my PayPal and Patreon links, and that's how I make my living, so I appreciate your support. But as always, you don't got to support me if you don't want to support me. All right, we will see you next time. Have a good time all the time. Bye. Hey, Ziggy. Did I wake you up from your nap? Ziggy. I'm sorry for waking you up from your nap. Look at him. He just got up. All right. And I made a noise just before I turned the camera on him. But Ziggy, let me tell you about the Postal Service. Let me tell you why there's a person who shows up every afternoon and then makes some noise on our porch so you won't have to... No, he's not even listening. All right, Ziggy, bye.